Hey guys, welcome to my introduction to tarot video. If you've never watched any of my videos before, my name's Catherine and I'm a professional tarot card reader. So, you're going to have to put up with me looking down all the time because I'm going to need to find things on the desk. I'll probably be knocking things over here and there. So here we go. Tarot cards. First off, anybody can learn to read tarot cards. There's no great mysticism to it. The history of tarot, that's a tricky one. Lots of people will tell you all about how they originated in Egypt, how they came out with the Hebrews and they're all mystically associated with Kabbalah, or that they came from China. There really isn't any evidence for that. If you want to believe that kind of stuff, that's great. There's nothing wrong with believing it. It's not wrong per se. We just don't actually have any evidence for it. The evidence we do have takes us back to about 1300s. Where a description of a card game in Italy just fits tarot. The oldest cards currently in existence date back to that time period in Italy. So the ones that are left, museums, private collections, absolutely beautiful. You can get current decks based on them called Visconti Sforza, and they are really, really lovely. If you like Renaissance art, that is going to be your thing. Check them out. From Italy, they went to France, and the French deck, the Tarot de Marseille, no points for guessing what part of France they were made in, and they tended to look like this. So check there, make sure you can see them. So that is just one example. As you can see, the color palette, blue, red, yellow. And we'll take another one and see what we can find here. Temperance, blue, red, yellow. That is very much the color palette of the Tarot de Marseille. The other thing that's worth noting is that the minor arcana look like this. So, 9 of Cups just has literally 9 cups. And let's have a look at some more examples. One like that, and one like this. As you can see, a 7 of coins, as they're referred to in this deck. Literally just coins. If it's got swords, literally swords. They are what we call pip cards. Now, once we moved beyond the 1800s and they were being used for fortune telling, the 1800s is really where you start to see them used as fortune telling devices. Before that, it was just a card game. Let's put all the woo-woo and the mysticism aside. It was a card game. But give credit to the French, they turned it into a tool for divination. But as I've shown you, cards, very basic. It wasn't easy to interpret based on them, and it sort of felt like the realm of skilled, trained, special psychic people. Unfortunately, just as a little heads up, you will see that in our community quite a lot. I don't like it. It's nothing for our community to be proud of, but unfortunately you do see a lot of this. Not anybody can read tarot cards. You have to have a gift. I'm special because I can read cards. We don't want that. Anybody can read cards. Some people read them more intuitively. Some people take to them faster. Other people, it takes a little bit more time to build their confidence. But there's no special psychic gene or only certain people who, the 7th child of a 7th child, and nonsense. Anybody can learn to read. But those type of cards, like the Visconti Sforza and the Marseille cards, made it a little bit more difficult for the casual reader or the new reader to come to it. So the deck that we most commonly associate tarot card reading with these days is one that you have probably come across, the Rider-Waite deck, and the box tends to look like that. I can position it on my screen in a way that is not chunky. There you go. The Rider Tarot deck. Then it advanced to being called the Rider-Waite deck. Riders are the publishers. Waite was Arthur Waite, and he was very into what at the time was considered high ceremonial ritual magic, think Golden Dawn, that kind of thing. And he wanted to make tarot cards accessible to everybody. So he took some of the traditional meanings of the cards, and he also loaded them with very sort of Western high magic meanings. He also got somebody to get rid of the whole pip card thing by bringing in illustrations for even the minor arcana. And so we get these, like the Ace of Wands. A little bit of an image there. Maybe it's not like fantastic, but let's check out this one. Five of Cups. Now we're getting a bit more of a visual. The color palette, still very limited, although there's some black and white. But as you can see, a little bit more scenery, a little bit more background. Go. Little dude, kind of looks like John Travolta. Telling you, get a Rider-Waite Smith deck and have a look. Once you've seen it, you can never unsee it. But there we go. There he sits with his little cups. You've got some background. This meant that it was easier to read the deck because there were prompts. You could look at the picture and interpret the picture. All kinds of meanings in the picture. Now, as for the major arcana, those are the biggies. There we go. As you can see, more detail. We've suddenly got the introduction of things like sphinxes, the Egyptian type image. There's Justice in her red robes. So some tradition, but as you can see, a lot more detail. Empress, just to give you another example, you've still got your color palette. There's blue, there's red, there's yellow. They didn't completely abandon those, but as you can see, they built on them a little bit. There's little details on the throne, there's little details on the scepter. Now, a lot of people have done a lot of research on those details, looking for clues in Freemasonry and ceremonial magic. There's an A.E. Waite book of spells. A lot of things in there that you might look at and go, that maybe relates to the tarot deck. You don't have to have a look. If you're interested, check it out. Now, our friend here is what most modern decks are based on. It is generally called the Rider-Waite Smith deck now because the artist was a woman called Pamela Coleman Smith, and she finally actually gets some credit for being the person who drew all the amazing drawings on all the cards. You may notice in the corner of the cards, sort of generally this area here, you'll find her little signature on all of them if you have a Rider-Waite Smith deck. Now, see on the back, it will give you some detail, and she finally gets some props there. This is what most modern decks are based on. If you learn to read with one of these, you can, generally speaking, read any 78 card deck. Now, the 78 cards break down to 22 major arcana. Those are the big ones. Justice, the Empress, the Hermit, Chariot, Star, Moon. You get the picture, you know those ones. And then the minor, 56 cards. They break down very much like a regular deck of cards. You have the aces, which generally represent 1. Then you have 2 to 10. Then you have court cards, king and a queen. And in a tarot deck, you'll usually have a page and a knight. Sometimes they're named slightly differently, and you'll have a knave and a knight. Or I've seen decks that are named mother and father and son and daughter to make sure the masculine and feminine are a bit more balanced. But generally, they will follow that pattern. They will also be broken down into 4 suits. These will usually be wands, swords, cups, and pentacles. Now, you will occasionally find other language substituted. I've seen wands that have been called rods, staffs. Swords tend to be the most consistent. Cups will occasionally be renamed chalices if you want to get a little fancy. And then sometimes you end up with pentacles that are called coins, discs, something along those lines. Occasionally you'll see a deck that goes completely off on its own tangent and calls them something wildly different. Air, water, earth, fire, shells and acorns. And it'll take you a little while handling a new deck, seeing what the differences are, and you'll fit into it. Or you won't. There are decks that I have that are lovely, beautiful. Let's see if I can find one. Here's one. Tarot del Fuego. It's bright, it's fun. Give you an example what it looks like inside. I like the bright colors. I like that it is so very different. There we go. 5 of Swords. That's what that looks like. 5 of Swords. Let's find another one. King of Cups. I have to scan some of these and put them on my page. As you can see, they're a little different. Now, although they're still cups and wands and swords, I like the imagery because it's different, but I wouldn't read with them. Kind of used to what I'm used to, and sometimes you get that. Once you start reading tarot cards, you will fall in love with owning tarot cards. You sometimes hear this, oh, tarot cards will lead to the devil, and tarot cards just lead to more tarot cards, trust me. I have a whole pile here. If I could turn the camera, you would see the stack of tarot cards. You just can't resist. You see a new deck or somebody recommends one and suddenly you feel the urge to go out and buy. Christmas and birthday lists are always tarot cards. Just happens. You'll embrace it. Now, as I said, Rider-Waite, that's the one you're gonna go with. There are stories about how you can't buy your own deck. I don't know where these come from. All that happens is people either steal decks, which is just awful, not, again, a good reflection on the community. Please don't do that. Or they ask friends and family for a tarot deck for Christmas. They get a tarot deck for Christmas, they open it up, and they go, I don't really like the imagery. I don't like how it feels. It's too big for my hands. It's too small for my hands. And then you end up disappointed. In fact, fun fact, that's how I ended up with my Tarot del Fuego, the little fellow we just talked about. Somebody ended up being gifted one of those, because again, you can't buy your own deck. And she was mortified. She really didn't like the imagery. There's some imagery on it that's very graphic. And she was just like, what do I do with this now? Can you sell tarot cards? Again, the mythology gets a little silly. Some people feel uncomfortable with even selling them. So I traded her another deck that I had that she liked. Bless. I bought this. I bought it a very long time ago. I have been reading tarot cards since I was 12, which means a very long time ago. Let's just say a very long time ago and leave it at that. You see at the back. Let's see if I can line it up. I paid 139 rands. I bought this in South Africa. Little shop in Johannesburg called Fascination. Any fellow Sapphirs out there? who are still living in Johannesburg or happen to know where the fascination is still there, I'd love to know. But I bought my own deck. Nothing bad happened. Nobody died. Please, feel free. Go and look at tarot decks, look at reviews online. Find one that you like, one that you connect with, that you like the feel of handling. A lot of tarot cards have got a nice glossy finish, and that makes shuffling easy. You can't really tell, although if I try to catch the light with it, which it has been doing all day but it's not going to do for me now that I'm trying. There we go. You can see it's a shiny finish. Makes shuffling easier. Now, when you buy your first tarot deck, as you're going to because you're not going to steal it, it will come with one of these, a little book. Now, throw it away. Sounds awful to say. Okay, maybe don't throw it away. But it is not the Bible. It is not anybody's Bible. I have a shoebox, and every one of these that I get with the tarot deck gets hoofed into the shoebox. Some of them are super useful, and they'll give you a history of tarot, and they'll tell you lots about the cards. Here we go. They'll talk about cups, and they'll talk about the numbers, and they'll tell you what eights mean, and they'll tell you what the kings mean, and they'll tell you the differences. And it's useful. Don't get me wrong, it's useful. However, most modern decks, as I said, are based on the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. But artists are now free to put their own interpretation on it, use different imagery. However, what often happens, particularly with the, should we say, more affordable decks, is that this just gets thrown in with that deck. And the information on here bears no resemblance to the actual deck that the artist has created, which is a shame, but it makes these fairly useless. So, stick them in a shoebox. Now, quick introduction to the best way to learn to read tarot. Don't get too hung up on all the meanings, please. Because here's the thing. The meanings vary depending on the reader. Now you're going to say, Catherine, that sounds awful. How can I possibly learn if it varies person to person? Everybody's got to start somewhere. So, that little book that I told you to throw away or to ignore, feel free to ignore it. I still stand by that. But I told you that we do love to buy tarot decks. What we also love to do is to buy tarot books. So, just to give you a few examples. We have the Tarot book. We have Tarot Mania. And my personal favorite, Super Tarot, Sasha Fenton, really. Lots and lots of different tarot books. They're great. Pick them up from the library. Also, don't discount books like this one. They're very silly. There's lots of nonsense in there. Some people would think that tarot card reading is amongst the nonsense. But you can look at runes, you can look at astrology, you can look at numerology. It's all in there. They will all have a section. They will all have a section on tarot. Then you get yourself something like this little book, or of course something like this. This feels very fancy. I do love it. It's got those, the handmade, fabric-y feel kind of pages. You can't use fountain pens on them. Having said that, I'm really shit with a fountain pen. Calligraphy, not my strong suit. So, I don't mind. They kind of look beautiful. The leathery feel. Once you've got a good pile of them going, you kind of feel like you're giving your tarot time the reverence it deserves by putting it in a beautiful book. Not to knock this, which is your standard lined paper and has my scrollings. So there's some of my keywords. Keywords are what are going to get you reading tarot super fast. Now, don't hurry. There's no rush. I know some people like to, get a deck for their birthday or Christmas, and 2 months later they want to be charging for readings. Maybe it will happen that fast for you. but don't rush the process. So, keywords. That's how you learn. Now, I'm going to show you something else that people are going to say, blasphemy. I actually have a friend who teaches Bible studies, and he took his Bible into the class, obviously, and some of the students took real umbrage at the fact that he'd used highlighters in the Bible, and he was sort of feeling, it's just a book. Maybe the script is sacred and the traditions are sacred, but it's a book. And he did fall out with a few of his students. I have encountered similar things, because here's what I do. This is, again, Rider-Waite. You can see the Fool at the front. They're smaller than the traditional ones that I have. You often find tarot cards tend to come in two sizes. The bigger size and the slightly smaller size, usually described as pocket-sized, travel-sized, something along those lines. What you can do, this is my mini deck from when I taught my daughter to read tarot cards. You stick a label on the back. Now this is where people go, you what? Yes, you stick a label on the back. It's okay. It's okay. Shh. Stick a label on the back. You put your keywords there. So the Chariot. What I always think of with the Chariot is you're moving forward. Progression. Making headway. Advancement. As you can see. Now, when you're traveling on the bus or you're waiting in line, keep these in your handbag and you look at your keywords. It's also great for testing yourself. Lift one out, you're okay, put it down, and you try to remember what's on the back. You think about it. You look at the image, you see if anything pops out at you, and then you look at your notes on the back. That gets you moving quickly. Granted, it's 78 of them to get through, but like I said, it takes time. So, that is the quickest way to get you going. Now, somebody might say, where do you get the keywords from? Now, the keywords are not necessarily going to come from here because they look like this. And this is what sometimes puts people off, because you look at it and you go, I've got 78 cards and there's reams and reams on every individual card. Don't worry about it. All you need to do, have a look through your books, have a look through this, and notice whether there's any overlap. We just talked about the Chariot, moving forward, progression. Does more than one book say that? Okay, if more than one book says progression, get your little book, make a note. Let's see if I had the Chariot in here and what I put. The Chariot, advancement, progression, making headway, and terribly predictable. You write your little notes. If something is in the books but doesn't ring true for you, it just feels off, make a note of that. Write it down, put it in brackets, you can put a little asterisk next to it, or you can write directly underneath it, not sure. It's okay to be not sure. If it doesn't feel like it's the right interpretation for you, make that note. Because this is how you and your cards get to know each other. Now, at the beginning of this video, I said throw the woo-woo out the door. Now I'm talking about you and your cards getting to know each other, which sounds a little woo-woo. Fair enough. You will find, as you talk to other people who read tarot, you'll inevitably go on forums, get to know people. Different cards have slightly different meanings to different readers. Your cards will get to know you, and they will communicate with you. Ideas will pop into your head when you look at the image. So, let's just pick one randomly. The Page of Cups. You'll look at the Page of Cups, and you'll notice the water behind him. You'll say, what could that signify? What does that say to me? Somebody else won't notice the water at all. They'll notice what he's wearing. What about the print on that little tunic? What does that say to me? And that's what you write down. What pops out at you? You write that down. Most readers have cards that signify certain things. I'll give you an example. Marriage. There are cards that traditionally all the books will say tend to indicate marriage. So things like the Lovers, Two of Cups. Some people will say Ace of Cups. For other people, the Ace of Cups is their baby card. It varies. For me, it's the Four of Wands. Don't ask me why. I could probably go into some detail on why I assume that my deck tells me that's my marriage card. But for me, when I read, if the Four of Wands comes up, wedding. Either the person that is asking the question, or maybe they're going to attend a wedding, maybe it's somebody in the family, maybe they're an event coordinator, and that's what they have coming up. But that is the weddings card. That card shows up in a reading. There we go, weddings. Your deck will communicate with you. There are other ways to get your deck to communicate with you. Some people are very attracted to colors. If you're interested in learning how to read auras, colors are probably going to work for you. So look at what color meanings there are. And then look at that. And then go, Queen of Wands. God, there's an awful lot of yellow. Or is that gold? Or is that mustard? Depends on your take. And then you look, what does that signify? If you're into numerology, look what the numbers mean. You can adapt any system to work with tarot to make it fit your personality and your insight better, because that's all it is. People talk about psychic energy. It's your insight and your connection with your deck and your willingness to let your insight lead will help you give the best readings. Now, it depends. Do you want to just give readings to your friends for a little bit of fun? Do you want to start charging for readings at the country fair? Do you actually want to do it professionally? For every stage, you're going to have to up your game, which means going more in depth. I showed you my teaching deck for teaching my daughter to read. They eventually become this kind of teaching deck with that kind of stuff on the back. Very detailed notes talking about reverse cards. Some people use reverse, some people don't. You don't have to. You do not have to. Again, there's a little bit of snobbery around tarot cards where people say, oh, you have to use this, you have to do this. You're not a real tarot card reader unless you use this, that, or the other. It's nonsense. If you read tarot cards, you're a real tarot card reader. You know, let's just cut some of that woo-woo out. So, you add details. You add what works for you. If reverse cards doesn't work for you, don't use them. Spreads. If a particular spread is all the rage, but it doesn't work for you, your readings feel stunted. You can't get it to flow. It just seems awkward and clunky. Then that spread is not a good spread for you. A lot of these little things will come with some detail of a spread. Let's see if this one's going to make me a liar, and it's not going to contain any spreads. Which, in fact, there it is. There it is. There you go. That's normally what you get with your deck. It's known as the Celtic Cross, and it is the most common spread. It's great when somebody is asking a very specific question. However, if somebody's asking, what's ahead of me for the new year? Where's my relationship going? I'm just looking for a general reading. I'll be honest, I hate it when clients say that. I'm just looking for a general reading. So, oh, really? Okay, then. This one comes with all the little books. If somebody has a very specific question, it can be useful. I don't use it that much. I don't find it that useful. Here's another one. You can make up your own spreads. Yep, gonna get blasted for that. But you can. If you want to line them up in 3 rows of 3 and have the top row signify one thing and the middle row signify something else and the bottom row signify something again, that's okay. If you want to only use the major arcana, that's okay. In fact, some readers only use the major arcana, the big ones that we talked about, the 22. They only use those in readings, and they bring in the minor arcana to clarify. So if you're asking about your job and you get the Lovers and you think, what does that mean? They will then put a minor card next to it to help with the interpretation. A lot of readers do that. Other readers like to shuffle everything together and lay out a spread, and you could get no major cards, or you could get 90% major cards. Sometimes it's useful because the suits can tell you an awful lot. Remember, we talked about our 4 suits. They can give you a lot of insight. If you're only using the major arcana, because those are your heavy hitters, you're missing out on the opportunity. Somebody's talking to you about this business that they want to launch, and you're using all the cards, and you do them a nice spread, and it's just swords everywhere. That tells you something. You want to know what it tells you? We'll have to do that in another video. But if you're only using the majors, you're missing out on the opportunity for depth. But some people really do like the major arcanas. They're really, I guess it's the imagery. They're far more provocative. You get the Empress or the High Priestess, the Hermit. It seems so much more provocative than the 5 of Wands or the 6 of Swords. And people don't relate to them in the same way. So again, that's why I say some people use the majors for the initial spread, and then they overlay that with minors, and you get the best of both there. It's a good way to go, especially if you're learning, because then you get practice with the majors and practice with the minors. So it is a good starting tool. You'll find your own feet and figure out whether you like to use them all together, keep them separate. I know people who use 2 different decks for that. That's a little bit complicated for me. I don't like to mix up my decks, but again, you've got to do what works for you. So, Intro to Tarot, there you go. Thank you for watching my video. If you'd like more details on the card meanings or on spreads, any of the other bits and pieces, check out other videos. Thanks.